if you really think about it, this Illumination hate train is kind of undeserved. Sure, they have their fair share of quote-unquote bad movies. It can't be all bad, right? Oh, stop! So what better than to rank every movie worst to best before the release of Despicable Me 4? Despicable Me is about this guy named Gru who's a washed-up supervillain. After finding out that someone stole the Pyramid of Giza, him and his minions come up with the plan to steal the moon. So he needs to get this shrink ray first. But as he's stealing it, this guy in pajamas pulls up named Vector, and he straight up steals it from Gru. Side note, there are also these 3 orphan girls that always sell cookies to Vector. So Gru decides to adopt these girls, uses them to distract Vector, and steals back the shrink ray. Gru gives back the girls to the orphanage, and goes to space to steal the moon. Vector then steals the girls, but Gru now loves the girls, so he trades the moon for them. But turns out that the shrink ray is only temporary, so Vector gets stuck on the moon. The end. I'm gonna be honest, I've always secretly unironically liked this first movie. This and another one I'll mention later have always been the best ones out there. I think since this is the first Illumination movie, they don't know the type of power that the minions have yet. I bet after this movie though, your mom's Facebook feed was just flooded after this point with exercise. I thought you said extra fries. Comedy, that's so funny. So they actually had to try to make a good movie here. I know it sucks, Illumination, but you're gonna have to try. And only for this one though, you'll be good after. The way that the story works around Gru trying to become the world's greatest villain and in doing so ends up adopting these girls is just a really solid story. And what's good too is that the minions don't really have an effect in this movie like a crazy amount just yet. They're here more as like a little side joke here and there. Solid A tier.
Hop, little bunnies, hop, hop, hop.
Hop begins and we're shown the Easter Bunny and his son. Cut like a couple of years, and the Easter Bunny's son is ready to take up the mantle over the Easter Bunny, but can give a single care about it because he wants to become a professional drummer. So he runs away. We're also introduced to this guy named Fred who hits him with the car, so they become best friends. There's also this Latino baby chicken named Carlos who wants to become the Easter Bunny. Carlos is so desperate to become the Easter Bunny though that he has the cojones to trap the dad from earlier. This dude eventually becomes an actual rabbit, which is insane. But get this, the bunny wins because he starts playing the drums, and the chickens that were helping Carlos, they just start dancing and they just die. Why am I still talking about this movie? I don't know, I fell asleep after they showed the title card. What the fuck? This movie is so dumb. Genuinely, who watched Hop? It's just an all over the place movie. I physically cringed watching this. Some scenes in here are just so bad to the point where you have to stop and just think. Grown people decided to act and voice in this movie. There's a scene in here where the bunny's like sexually absorbing the chemicals in this girl's hair, and Sonic Man is like frustrated about this. Like we're gonna have a B-movie situation. It's a rabbit. Look, I get where this movie was coming from. It's trying to be a cute Easter movie, but it just fails so bad at it. And I also just found out that the bunny's name is EB, which means, get this, Easter Bunny. Garbage. The Lorax is set in a world where there's no air anywhere, which if you look at the movie is obviously a lie. And a boy named Ted who has a crush on Taylor Swift, and she tells him that she loves trees. So his horniness drags him all the way to this man who has a tree, but he has to listen to a story about a man who broke down all the trees, became rich as sang this banger of a song on how he can't be bad, and how the Lorax didn't want him to break a single tree for the environment. Eventually he breaks all the trees down, ruins the environment, and goes out of business. Eventually Ted does get his tree, and they break into this big dance and live happily ever after. You know the Lorax, right? Of course you do, look at this. But did you even know that there's a book about it too? And it's written by someone named Dr. Sayus? What a money-hungry imbecile to take such a bland movie that contradicts itself by having a fucking car in the commercial and make a book about it. Shame on you, Dr. Sayus. Honestly, the Lorax is the definition of it's so good it's bad, and I don't say that lightly. If you've ever read the book, then you know that the Onceler's like this faceless man. So what the fuck happened here? Because it just seems to contradict itself so much. Everything that made it good in the book is just lost here for Fat Bear is fat and short man. I mean, alright, that's pretty fun. But in the book, this kid goes to the Onceler because he wants to make the environment better. But here, he just wants some pussy. And the Lorax isn't even in this movie. He says, hey, you can't do that to the trees, it's forbidden. And then he leaves. What also gets me mad is how the Onceler who destroyed all the trees never once plants some new ones in their place. All this could have been resolved if he just put a damn seed in the floor. And these people in this whole movie, they didn't have a single issue about the environment. They even sing about it in the beginning. They don't even care that their son is green. But the second that Ted starts talking about trees, they all fall in love with it. Also, the people at Illumination use some of the ugliest characters in this movie. If you look close enough, some of these people are the same. Look, in all honesty, this movie isn't bad, but this movie just frustrates me because it just could have been so much more if they just put the guts to go for it. It does have its moments where it's a bit charming, but it's just not something that I'm looking forward to seeing again. C tier. So this is about Gru, who was given up villainy altogether to be with his girls. He meets this lady named Lucy, and she kidnaps him. Anti-villainy because someone stole a serum that turns everything evil and purple and stuff, and needs his help finding it. But since Gru sells jams and jellies now, he's out. Anyways, he's back in because his jellies are kind of ass. They go into the mall because someone here has the serum. How did they know this? I don't know. But eventually they find him in this guy named El Macho, who steals a bunch of little minions, turns them purple, and they do evil purple stuff. And bing bang boom, he turns the minions regular, saves Lucy, they get married, YMCA, roll credits. This is probably the most okay movie. Like, sure, it's Despicable Me, but I think at this point, Illumination knew that they didn't have to put effort into their stories anymore. And they just go all in into not caring, and it loses that charm the original one had. And especially with Despicable Me, I feel like it would be super hard to make a good sequel because everything that needed to happen to Gru already happened in the first movie. He turned bad then good, okay, now what? And it's just a completely separated movie because it sidelines the girls for this new romance. I thought the girls were okay, but I mean, I guess it worked. Plus, the minions are like twice as much in here. I feel like every single one of these movies should have an X next to it, meaning how much more the minions are gonna be in it. For all these movies, I like to think that Illumination came up with the story by just drawing a big minion in the middle with a bunch of stories on the side and just sold it as that. The movie isn't really that big of a bother. I mean, it's just minions, so I don't really care about it. Look, as long as they don't revolve a whole movie around them, I think we'll be good. B tier. This movie starts by showing us how the minions have existed since the beginning of time, which... Anyways, they show how the minions only exist to serve the most evil villain in the world. But after killing every leader, they end up in this cave and become so depressed because they have no one else to serve. So minions 1, 2, and 3 set out to look for a new villain. They end up at VillainCon and find Scarlet Overkill. She uses the minions to help steal the crown of the queen, but somehow Bob became the new queen, and Scarlet gets pissed about this, so she tries to kill the minions. But minion number 1 grows giant and blows up Scarlet. Somehow she survives this and takes the crown. But Baby Gru shows up and he just takes it. And the minions have found their new leader, the end. This movie made $1 billion. I think this is where Illumination knew that they had infinite power and how anything they will do will be amazing as long as they have funny Yellow Man, since kids were probably going into the theater like this.
Tell me your name.
My name is Maximus Decimus Meridian.
Boo!
Oh, hello, Papagena.
Yeah! This movie is ass. If you've seen the other ones, then you know that the minions were made as these like side characters. They were there to make funny jokes. In this movie, they show how they're not supposed to change. They were made for one purpose, which is to serve a villain. That's it. Oh, and if you haven't noticed, the minions don't speak. So put it all together and put it into this and you get... You can't make this up. You can't make a movie about the minions because what the f are they gonna do? Literally what? You know what? I'm glad that this movie exists. That I'm able to show you exactly why it doesn't work. There's literally nothing for you here. It's just so tone deaf. It's a nothing movie. Sure, it's like you have stuff in here that I guess could be considered comedy, but as a movie altogether, it just doesn't work. Garbage. So this dog Max is mad because his owner brings home a new dog named Duke. They get into this massive fight and eventually get caught by animal control. They get rescued like 5 minutes later by Kevin Hart and his gang of homeless animals. But after killing their gang leader, it's over for them. Also, this dog finds out that Max is missing. Duke gets caught by animal control, so Max goes and saves him. They become best friends, go home, and act like nothing happened. The end. The Secret Life of Pets should have been called The Stupid Life of Pets. It's a movie with a doggy. Wow. So the whole premise of this movie is, what do animals do when their owners aren't there? Wow, so much originality. But what's funny is that what's shown in this movie is in the trailer. I didn't even have to waste 90 minutes of my life. I could have just watched this. This movie is basically a ripoff of Toy Story, but just not good. There's a scene in here where Duke's previous owner was an old man and he runs away and they come back and he died. What? This movie is like the most safest generic pet movie you could ever imagine. It's Toy Story for Facebook moms. It's soulless, uninteresting, with forgettable character designs and bland locations. C tier. Sing is about this koala named Buster Moon who has this theater that makes absolutely no money. So he makes a singing competition of $1,000, but his assistant accidentally adds 2 zeros to the prize money. There's a bunch of animals that show up, they try to win the prize, and Buster ends up with his crew. They all have their own stories, like this elephant is shy, and this gorilla is a criminal, and this mouse who's an absolute douche. He's so cool, in fact, that he has to pay people money and tries to steal the money from the theater, but they find out that there's no money. But eventually they do the show despite Buster lying, and it becomes a huge success. Sing is basically a movie where you get cute animals and you make them sing. Sing wasn't as bad as I remember it being, though the bar was extremely low. It just moved up a tiny bit. Just get rid of all the pop songs except for this one and uncomfortable pig costumes, and you've got yourself a solid story here. One thing I will say though is that Seth MacFarlane Mouse is just so funny to me. Every character is meant to be super relatable and likable, but then you have this character who's just an unapologetic asshole to just everyone around him. He doesn't even have like a redemption arc. He just indirectly causes the theater to be destroyed. He doesn't help to fix it unlike everyone else, and then shows up at the end, delivers the best performance in the movie, and then he fucking dies. Also, the pigs in here be active. Look how many damn babies she has. I know that song, the movie. Beats here. After Gru and Lucy get married, they end up working for the AVL and are tasked to hunt down this guy named Randy from South Park, who is obsessed with stuff from the 80s. Some dude shows up and they meet Gru's twin brother Drew, who's rich as fuck because their dad is a supervillain. They end up working together to stop Brad, and Brad goes to do evil things. But then out of nowhere, he comes out the water as this giant robot version of himself to destroy everything. But Gru defeats him in this dance battle at the end. This movie sucks. Drew is stupid. His voice gets me so mad. But what I do like is that they let Gru be a villain in here, which should be the whole point of these movies. But what's super dumb here is that there's like 2 other storylines that are just so unnecessary. You have the minions who go to jail, which is like, okay, who cares about that? But the girls go on this adventure to find the unicorn. It's the most boring filler that I've ever seen in a movie. There's legit no point for this to exist. They just needed the girls to do something, or else what's the point? This movie is spreading itself so thin that there's no room for anyone to do anything important. Illumination basically crammed 3 bad movies into this one gigantic horrible mutation, and I'm not for it. And apparently Gru isn't even their first name. It's Felonious? Is that Felonious? So does that mean that this guy's name is Drew Gru? What? I feel like at this point this series just gotten so diluted that even trying to come up with a review for this movie is just impossible because there's nothing here. This movie also made another billion. No wonder they keep making more. C tier. The Grinch is iconic, but if you don't know the story, it goes something like this. The Grinch lives alone in this mountain with his dog Max and hates everything that has to do with Christmas, so he comes up with a plan to steal it from everyone by dressing up as Santa and taking everyone's presents. He gets caught by this little girl named Cindy Lou. The Grinch eventually escapes and steals Christmas anyways, but after a while he feels bad because no one really cares that he stole Christmas, and everyone just forgives him for stealing the presents. Roll credits. This is one of the better Illumination movies, but he gets a pass because the Grinch already has an easy concept to follow. It's just a fun little Christmas movie. But keep in mind, I said Christmas movie. This is not the Grinch. First of all, if you see the Grinch, he's supposed to be this like menacing person that everyone is scared of. Even saying the name Grinch freak people out. So why is he just walking around in here buying stuff and the people are interacting like
No. Well, that's not very nice.
The fact that this lady says, hey, that's not very nice. No it's the Grinch! Illumination, be serious. What do you want him to be? You go walking around, you see this green, ugly dude, and you're gonna ask him to be nice? If anything, this lady should be the main character in this movie because she's so damn clueless. She's probably the CEO of Illumination. That's how frustrated this movie gets me, because the Grinch is supposed to be scary. So why isn't he scary, Illumination? Please answer me that question. The most evil thing he does in here is that he eats a pickle and he spits it up and gives it to this lady, which isn't evil, it's nasty. But if you ignore all that and even the fact that he doesn't even sound scary and how it has Illumination written all over it, it is a pretty decent movie. B tier. Max and Dude go on vacation on this ranch. They meet this alpha dog who has like no plot relevance. He's just here to tell Max that he sucks and makes Max do stuff to prove that he's an alpha dog too. There's also a story in here where Kevin Hart Bunny is a superhero now. He goes on to save this tiger from this Russian dude. They run him over and the tiger escapes back with them. And that's literally it. The Secret Life of Pets 2 is just such a hum movie. It's so predictable and forgettable. And the stories in here just make absolutely no sense. Where nothing matters, nobody cares, and I don't have anything else to say about it. Literally, I feel like Illumination just said, let's make Secret Life of Pets 2, but completely forgot that they have to write an actual story. They just wrote the first things that came up to their head and just called it a day. Garbage. After doing a bunch of shows, Buster Moon wants to take his theater to the next step. They end up getting an audition with this big name guy, Jimmy Crystal. He thought their performance sucked, but after mentioning someone named Clay Calloway, he agrees to let them do the show only if this Clay guy shows up. After seeing Clay, he booby-traps Buster's assistant for entering his property. They end up trying again, and he agrees to do the show because Scarlett Johansson just has such a way with words. After a while, the showrunner guy thinks that the show's gonna suck, so he tries to throw Buster off a roof. They do the show behind the dude's back, and he gets arrested for attempted murder. I think the difference between Sing 1 and Sing 2 is that there's a 2 on the title. I think for with this movie, the issue that really hits is that a lot of these characters are having their own issues that lead up to the main event, but it's just stuff that I feel like nobody really cares about. I really do see the appeal on how people would like to want to watch that, but I feel like if they just really focus on the Clay Calloway story, it would just be so much better. There's a side plot in this movie where the pig is scared of heights. Illumination decided to make this a main story. Nobody cares about her heights, but overall you can see the improvement that Illumination made. C tier. This movie starts with this guy named Wild Knuckles and his crew, the Vicious Six, and they're trying to steal this thing called the Zodiac Stone. After stealing the stone though, he gets kicked off his group for being too old. Then we cut to Baby Gru, who wants to be a villain, so he gets an invitation to join the group. After going in for his interview though, he gets kicked out for being a child, and as revenge, Gru steals the Zodiac Stone. The dude gets kidnapped by Wild Knuckles and the minions have to go save him, so they learn karate from this lady. The Vicious Six get the stone and they turn into these giant animal monsters, so the minions turn into equally creepy minion animal hybrids, defeat the Six, and go on to do whatever the hell they wanted. Minions Rise of Gru is peak cinema. I don't know what it is about this movie, but something about it just is so intriguing. I think what really helped this movie out is that instead of the minions just being by themselves, they have someone helping them out now with the comedic stuff like Gru. And honestly, Gru is probably the weakest person in this movie. I was actively waiting for the minions to show up because that's how much better the movie is compared to the first one, with the addition of Gru being in it. What I could have done without though was this weak villains that they keep adding to these movies. Illumination loves to just add villains that don't matter. Like, bro, who cares? Show up for 2 seconds in this movie. They come in the beginning, and then at the end they turn into these giant monsters, and then that's it. I don't know if it was the hype around this movie around the time or if something just happened, but this movie was just kind of good. This one I'll give a pass. B tier. Brothers Mario and Luigi are trying to become the best plumbers in Brooklyn. After ending up in the sewers, his brother finds this giant green pipe and gets sucked into it. After teleporting to the other side, Mario ends up in the Mushroom Kingdom and his brother in the Badlands. Mario goes on to look for his brother and finds this toad who says that the princess can help. So they go to the castle and they get help from the Princess Peach and find out that Luigi has been captured by Bowser, who sings this masterpiece on how much he loves Peach. They all go get help from Donkey Kong and try to get the upper hand on Bowser by driving carts to stop him. Bowser captures Peach to marry her. But after teleporting back to Brooklyn, they defeat Bowser and move to the Mushroom Kingdom. I love Mario. Who doesn't like Mario? So when you find out that they're announcing a Mario movie, you're gonna get hyped, obviously. But then you see the cast, and
man, I spent hours of my life stomping Koopas.
This movie is kind of exactly what you would expect from a Illumination Mario movie. Just think of those new Super Mario Bros. Games, and they made it into a movie, and this is exactly what it would look like. Because the plot is an issue that I do have with this movie is that it's just heavily carried by nostalgia of people watching. For them to be like, yeah, I remember that. It's super fast too. You blink and boom, you're in Brooklyn. Boom, you're in the Mushroom Kingdom. And boom, back in Brooklyn. And it doesn't really let you live in the world, you know, like really feel what the characters are feeling. This movie keeps it up the whole time. I think they were just like, hey, it's Mario, and he's doing Mario things. Pay me money. Look, ooh, Rainbow Road. But what about the plot though? Rainbow Road though. But I gotta admit, this movie is the best looking Illumination movie I've ever seen. With the music added into the movie and the way that the animation flows, it just plays together for you to really fall in love with the movie. And you can't talk about the Mario movie without Bowser. But it is a great movie with great characters, just in a basic Mario story. I like to think that Nintendo was just breathing down Illumination's neck to just pump out this good movie. Nope, no, I don't want to hear a single fart in this movie. Not a single fart in this movie. A tier.
A duck walked up to a lemonade stand and he
After a family of ducks have been living in this pond their entire lives, they see another family of ducks leave the pond and they decide to go to Jamaica. But after ending up in New York City, they find a bunch of pigeons who know someone that can take them to Jamaica, but is trapped in this cage. They set him free from this chef who kind of looks like Jackson Galaxy from My Cat from Hell. After taking the key, they end up in this resort with a bunch of other ducks, but find out that it's actually a slaughterhouse for the chef. They all escape him, but he ends up finding everyone and puts him inside his helicopter. The birds throw tomatoes at the chef, he dies, they escape the plane, and they end up in Jamaica. The end. I remember when this movie came out, I absolutely did not want to watch it because it just looks so much like Rio, and Rio is the best movie of all time. And I watched it, and surprisingly, it's not that bad, and it's not like the story is anything crazy. It's just a road trip story, but it's just so funny to me. I guess one thing that kind of did throw me off was that I can't remember any of the birds and names. I think this one's name is Ducky, and the reason that they leave the pond in the first place was kind of a dumb way to transition to, but for me, none of this was a major issue. If you look at this villain too, he's not even a good villain, but the way that he just doesn't say a single word and how he grunts everything he says got me every time. Don't get me wrong, I probably won't see this movie in a while, but it is a good family film. Underrated movie. A tier. Well, that was fun. Good thing there's no more animation studios out there for me to review, because I don't want to talk about a movie ever again.